When you grab a cheap Newtonian off the internet, it's easy to picture a quick and easy night under the stars, only to end up wrestling with wobbling mirrors, blurry frames, and a telescope that never quite lives up to the hype. I've seen too many beginners spend a few $100s on a budget f/5 or f/6 reflector, only to discover they need a bigger mount, a cooler, and a lot more patience than they bargained for. That regret makes me wonder, is splurging on a more serious instrument actually a smarter move, or just another gamble? Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The Skywatcher Quattro 300P lands in that middle ground where the just big enough line blurs with seriously capable. It's a 12-inch Newtonian built around an f/4 optical design, which means you're looking at roughly half the exposure time you'd need on a typical f/8 SCT for the same signal-to-noise ratio. For anyone who's spent nights stacking dozens of 5-minute exposures just to get a decent nebula shot, that speed feels like a real productivity boost. But speed comes with its own set of expectations, and the Quattro's design tries to meet them. First off, the optics themselves are where the value really shows up. An f/4 paraboloid primary paired with an oversized secondary mirror delivers a fairly flat field across the sensor, so you won't be fighting vignetting on the corners of wide-field shots. The larger secondary also helps keep the central obstruction proportionally lower than you might see on other fast Newtonians, which translates to a bit more contrast in the final image, something you can actually notice when you pull a faint emission nebula out of the background. The knife-edge baffles that Skywatcher includes are a subtle but useful touch. They line the interior of the tube and help suppress stray light, especially when you're imaging from a suburban backyard with light pollution on the horizon. Now, let's talk about the focuser. The 2-inch dual-speed Crayford focuser is a big deal for astrophotographers because it gives you fine-step control for precise focus at high magnifications, while the coarse knob still lets you swing the tube around quickly during alignment. In my own sessions, I've found the dual-speed action smooth enough to make those tiny focus adjustments without hunting the motor back and forth, which saves a lot of time when you're dealing with a temperature-swinging night sky. That said, the focuser isn't a set-and-forget component. You still need to keep it clean and occasionally lubricate the bearings if you're in a dusty environment. What makes the Quattro feel like a complete kit is that Skywatcher actually bundles a few things you'd otherwise have to source separately: a sturdy tube ring, a focuser mount, and a set of mirror cells that are ready to go on a solid equatorial mount. You won't need to buy a separate secondary holder or chase down a custom Crayford for a starter build. For someone who's ready to step up from a 6-inch Dobsonian but isn't ready to design a custom tube from scratch, that Everything You Need promise cuts down the hidden cost of assembling a functional system. Of course, no telescope is a free lunch, and the Quattro's strengths bring a few practical compromises. The sheer size of a 12-inch f/4 tube means you're looking at roughly a 50-inch overall length and a weight that creeps past 30 pounds once you add the focuser, mirrors, and mounting hardware. That's a lot for a portable field session, and it also places a heavy demand on your mount. If you pair it with a modestly rated Altaz or a lightweight go-to mount, you'll start to see tracking errors showing up in longer exposures, and the mount may struggle to slew the tube smoothly. In short, the Quattro is not a pick-you-pan-go scope. It's built for a backyard where you have a sturdy pier or a permanent tripod, or for an observatory where the mount is already oversized for a 12-inch Newtonian. Another hidden trade-off is the need for careful collimation. Fast optics magnify any misalignment, so the f/4 design will reveal even tiny tilt errors in the primary or secondary mirrors as star-shaped blobs or uneven illumination across the frame. That isn't a deal-breaker, but it does add a step to the nightly routine that casual visual users often ignore. If you're new to collimation, you'll need to invest in a good laser collimator or a Cheshire eyepiece and spend a few evenings learning the process. Once you get the hang of it, the payoff is worth its sharper stars, cleaner nebulae, and fewer soft frames. So who should actually buy the Quattro 300P? If you already own a solid German equatorial mount rated for at least a 20-kilogram payload, and you've been doing deep sky imaging with a 6-inch f/5 Newtonian or a small SCT, the Quattro feels like a logical next step. Its fast optics will cut your exposure times dramatically, which means you can stack more frames in the same night, improve your signal-to-noise ratio, and tackle fainter targets like the Veil Nebula or distant galaxies.